All right.
Well, welcome to another installment of Conversations with Willi. That's me. This is all about permaculture, transition, and today it's about geomancy and a woman from Croatia and other parts of the world, Sabine Engelhardt. And I welcome Sabine. Why don't you tell us about your work and your vision going forward?
Thank you, Willie. It's nice to talk to you. Um, what my work is about is really a combination of architecture and what is called geomancy. And geomancy is the Western tradition of Feng Shui. However, that's somewhat confusing because I think it's all together quite a different thing. So it's basically relating to the subtle levels of the earth and creating balance with these levels and also with the subtle levels of the cosmos, I have to add. So most of the work that involves is actually dealing with unseen realities, let's say. And it's very much based on the idea that it's not just humans who have a consciousness, but also the earth and many other beings as well. So they're obviously clearly animals, they're plants that also have a consciousness in this understanding. And they're also obviously angels we are more familiar with. And there are elemental beings of the four elements basically, but there are also other ones. And there's also the landscape angels, for example, or spirits of place, let's say. So it's actually that's sort of on the sort of beings level, and then there are obviously other phenomena like energetic configurations, some of which are geometric, and some people might have heard of that concept of ley lines, of sort of people trying to find water with rods, and so this is all sort of part of this big picture. And when you sort of bring it together with architecture, it's in England often referred to bioarchitecture. So this is actually quite a sort of new form of architecture. There have been a number of pioneers in this field, and it's sort of now being taken to another level, let's say. So I think some people have worked with organic forms in this field, solely sort of in that, or others are more concerned with geomancy and maybe what you call sacred geometry. So they work often with quite sort of rectangular or quite, let's say, rigid forms or prescribed forms. That say, you know, if you use the golden mean, that's good, and that will sort things out. But I think what I'm involved with is a lot freer than that. So if I maybe, because I guess architecture, sort of everybody knows what that's about, but geomancy is still pretty freaky to get your head around.
Okay.
So for example, what we do when we just work in geomancy, that can be on a landscape level, or it can be on a small level of somebody's apartment or business or something like that. Okay. And it basically all works in fractals. So all the elements are present in a smaller space, and then that smaller space might take on a certain role within a bigger space. And these units in geomancy are referred to holons. So these are sort of energetic configurations that are sort of whole in themselves, let's say. So what we find on a small level, because that's maybe easier to understand how it affects people, is that often the problems people have are actually reflected in the space. So what we do is, if we often go to places or work an analysis on a plan of the plot itself, or a plan of the apartment, And what we do is we locate first chakras that follow that Indian principles of the 7 chakras up and down the spine, which probably quite a lot of people are familiar with. And what we find is sometimes we sort of feel on these plans where these chakras are located, whether they're big, they're small, whether they work, whether they don't work. And what often happens is that actually the place mirrors the people. So if people maybe have problems speaking to others, so they have a throat chakra block, they tend to live in a space where the same thing is a problem. So it's actually quite interesting to see that. And often there are also obviously many issues people have in their lives that are actually also connected to the place where they live. This is also a concept that's obviously been researched for a long time, that there are obviously also ley lines, there are power lines running through the earth that if people don't sleep well, if they can't hold on to money, if whatever, they have headaches, they have bad dreams, there's serious relationship issues, so all these things, they often have a mirror in the space where they live, or it's connected. So in this kind of work, you can obviously help people to resolve some of their issues, but half of the change is sort of the place, and half of the change is the people. So it's if sort of people don't want to make a change in their lives, and we just go there with our sort of Ghostbuster kit, let's say, of visualization or sounding, that's what we work with healing, then part of the problem is solved, but not the whole problem is solved.
How many people are practicing geomancy in Europe?
It's a very big movement. I'm from Germany originally, and then I lived in England for a while and set up a geomancy network there, and now I live in Croatia. So it's hard to quantify, but there's a relatively big scene, and it's also, maybe it sounds also strange to you, but it is a very wide field. So people sort of work with all sorts of different methods. So this is one with the chakras, but people work with big landscape stars, for example, they find in the landscape for healing. Others just work with energy grids. So there's a very, very wide range. I'm just switching off my email. That was no more noise in the background.
So Sabine, what is sacred to you?
Well, I have an issue with sacred geometry, I must say, but sacred generally, I think what is important for me is that the earth is sacred and the cosmos is sacred. And there's also, I think, that balance between male and female principles, which in many respects we tend to have skipped now, due to maybe Christian religion that sort of is much heavier on the male side. And I think that's, for me, something we have to sort of rediscover, let's say, to balance male and female energies well. And definitely that, we feel that the earth is sacred, because I think, where we've gone now in our development of human civilization, I think that's happened because to us the earth is no longer sacred.
Interesting.
Having said that, I think no, because you can take that to an extreme and say, I'm whatever. I'm not killing any more carrots to live. You can obviously take that to a point. But I think what also is the point that human creativity, I feel, is very important, and it's getting more and more important. That no longer, let's say, God is our father and the earth is our mother, but it's sort of. Are you still there?
Yeah, I just turned off my. I want to focus on you.
No worries. Yeah, that it's much more that. We are almost equal, let's say. What our civilization, I think, has demonstrated is that, you know, we're pretty close to actually extinguishing ourselves, our livelihood, and so we're sort of almost equal partners, let's say. So I think it's that sort of point of human creativity, I feel, is very important to consider as well. And I think with that comes, well, also a certain magnitude of intervention or of freedom to make changes, if you know
Truly.
what I mean.
Yes, I'm there.
Okay, so maybe if you want, I can just quickly go to this issue of sacred geometry. Or do you have any other question?
Oh, yeah, lots of questions. Let's skip that for now. Why do you think permaculturalists are so hesitant to include a spiritual or a sacred element in their work? Why is that?
I think the first answer is I wish I knew, and I wish it was different.
Okay.
Sort of going on from there, I think it is quite interesting to follow what's happened in the discussion group we were both part of. That I think for a very long time, anything spiritual has sort of not fitted in the very rational mindset our society has developed. And I think that's really the problem, that we, you know, anything that we can't see with our eyes, to be sort of very blunt about this, doesn't exist. I think that's sort of the very basic line. Obviously, it's a bit sort of more, it's finer than this. And I think that's the real problem. But I think, you know, for me, my spiritual life is a very, very important dimension. And I think it is a very important dimension for humanity. And I think it's not about, you know, being passive and believing what you're told. Not at all. I think the issue is now for us, you know, for each person themselves to have a deep connection with the sacred, let's say. And for a long time, we have been told what's right and wrong in that respect, or many people still sort of follow these threads by following the lead or following the guru, and not, you know, going inside and being very certain about what the wisdom inside about the own capabilities of, you know, finding a spiritual path and knowing what's right, which I feel is really the next step to take. And as far as I can see in permaculture, there are many people who are very much down to earth on a practical level. And somehow it rarely goes together. And for me, this is somehow the quality also in geomancy, that often you find the people who maybe follow Eastern spiritual traditions, or who are only in the spiritual realm. And then there are people who only, whatever, busy with the compost heaps, let's say. And, or, you know, with practical aspects of life, or who are researchers, or who are very much on sort of the rational path. And for me, really, the challenge is where these types of sort of interests or aspects of human life meet.
Yep.
And I mean, at the moment, we're sort of a few people who have set up a little association here in Croatia, and we're trying to set up a place on an island here, on the island Brač, where these two aspects come together, plus obviously regeneration of the island. And I'm waiting to see what's going to happen. I don't know if this is sort of too much off the mark, too high flying in terms of aims, or whether we will manage. We will see.
Okay, let's talk about flow. What is flow, Sabine?
Well, flow, you probably mean in terms of flow of energies. Is that right? That
Yeah, well, flow of design, of solution, of communication. I took it off your website.
um, I think this is, let's say, a sort of a good and positive exchange. I would say that there are no stagnations, which I feel is a very important aspect, because often also in ourselves, I think we always have points in our own development where we sort of get to and we find there is some sort of hurdle. And what I see in many people is that they don't sort of climb over it, or they stay sort of within the framework. I always like that story about elephants who are trained in Africa, and when they're little they're tied to a tree and they're obviously trying to pull that tree out, and they can't because they're small, but when they're big they're still tied, when they're finished in the evening, to that tree, and they could easily pull it out, but they have learned they can't. So that's sort of one aspect of flow on a personal level. On a sort of landscape or design level, what can happen sometimes is that there is stagnation, which is obviously the opposite of flow. And for example, where I live here in Zagreb, we found that there was a water course underneath, and that was stagnant. And how we got to it was that on 4 different levels, all the women died prematurely in their 40s, two on breast cancer and 2 on heart failure. For example, I mean, this is also an aspect of flow, or also life force sometimes get sort of stopped by if there is a sort of design that might be too narrow at one point, or if there are any interventions on a sort of bigger scale, like whatever, digging of swimming pools or motorways or something like that, if you sink a road into a landscape. So that's, I guess, the opposite of flow, or can be.
Interesting. Okay. I want to talk about alchemy now.
Uh-huh.
I want to talk about, is alchemy the same as transformation in your transformation exercises? Are you transmuting energies?
We are. I mean, what we are using in our healing work is visualization, and we are using sound for healing places. And we are transmuting energies. There's another school of geomancy or radiotherapy, I think. I'm not sure how you pronounce it in English. And that just says, look, guys, sorry, there's this bad junction of there's this grid crossing, and you can't keep on living here, or you have to put your bed in the other corner or something like that. And that's not what we're doing. We're actually working with the energies to change them.
Okay.
However, I mean, this is also something which obviously throws up issues of ethics, that there are long stories of, for example, the Nazis who knew very well how to work with geomancy, who diverted energy flows to serve their purpose, and so on. That there are umpteen stories of that kind of work as well. So I think it's very, very important to stay within a strong ethical framework when doing this kind of work. Or, I mean, the same thing you can apply to manipulating energies for your personal gain, for example, which is also something I would very strictly shy away from.
I see. Interesting. Okay, good. So what is grounding?
Grounding is connecting energies to the earth. What happens often when we do this kind of healing or geomancy work, that we actually connect strongly with the cosmos. It's like a meditative state where after you finish that kind of work, you need to ground yourself again. You sort of need to return to life here, to your everyday life. And if you want to say you have to grow sort of roots again to,
Okay.
to be sort of back in your life the same. Sometimes what happens is that if there are new buildings or buildings that don't sort of fit into their environment very well, that they also need grounding, or maybe people who travel an awful lot and have a place, whatever, which is close to a major traffic corridor or something like that, that also might need that same grounding. I mean, for example, I did a what we call cosmograms. This is also something we work with. These are reliefs we produce in stone for earth acupuncture projects, which are also used for healing places. And now I've lost my thread, I think.
That's okay. Take a break.
Yeah, with grounding. These stones also need to be grounded well so that they work. That's sort of another aspect where it's important.
Okay, interesting. So how will you connect us back to the earth? How do you propose to bring us into harmony with the planet?
What I feel is very important is that we connect with our heart quality very consciously and very regularly.
Okay.
And yeah, I think that's number one. And then that we align our actions to be in accordance with that, because I think a lot what keeps us away from that, from really connecting with our hearts, is that we're sort of very busy. I've been like that for years, running from one to the other, and just focused on very different things. Obviously, a new car, bigger flat, whatever. And I guess many people just don't know that that sort of level of connection exists between humans, because I think the heart quality is that what connects us with others and what connects us with the earth. And I think that's the basis of creating harmony. And I think there's also obviously the aspect I've been talking about before of, not sort of living your potential of, being the big elephant tied to the small tree. And just thinking, maybe tomorrow, what can I do? And I have to earn money and I have to do this and that.
So have you seen the dragon lately?
I have met one. That was obviously only an etheric one. Many levels other than the scene levels. And it's actually quite a funny story, because I don't very often get sort of these sort of almost fairy tale pictures, but this was the monastery where the heart focus is on the island Baraj, where we want to get this center going, because it has this potential heart quality. And I was looking for access energetically to this place. We were a group of people I was leading there. And then some sort of dwarf appeared, with a big key ring, said, "Come with me." And so we sort of, I followed him, and we went sort of, it's quite a tall mountain there, about 800 meters tall. So he sort of told me, "Come with me." And I followed him, and there was a big dragon, which was pretty unhappy, and it was sort of tied up, and it was just saying, "Acknowledge me."
That's it?
Yeah, and I mean, from sort of a geomantic point of view, dragons stand for this vital energy of a landscape, which obviously you probably know the concept of vital energies of humans, how we are born with a huge amount of it and it sort of slightly goes down more and more in the course of our lives.
Yeah.
And how we sort of obviously, let's say when we go on holiday or have a rest or do something that we really enjoy, how we sort of recharge our batteries, to put it. So that's sort of the vital energy aspect. So that's sort of connected to the dragons, sort of that energizing aspect of a landscape, which is also, I think, very good for humans to be there for a while, but not for too long. And obviously the dragons also, the sort of St. George myth and all of that, it also sort of stands for the power of the earth, for the sort of counterparts that was sort of, somehow slayed by Christianity, let's say. Probably well-known St. George's myth. So I guess the sort of connection with geomancy and the dragon is also just to say, apart from God who sort of lives up in the sky, there's also a God in the earth, let's say, or a goddess mostly.
Are you finding any other new mythologies coming from geomancy? New stories, folklore, or myths? Are they coming up from this work now?
I personally don't work with stories so much, but a colleague of mine does, and I haven't spoken to her. She's only started what sort of she's doing out of these links. But what is happening, I feel, is that we are sort of feeling more and more the presence of extraterrestrials, mm-hmm. and sort of their help and involvement on Earth. That it is sort of easier and easier for more and more people to connect with these unseen dimensions, and more people do so. And I think, so these are, I guess, the sort of new stories happening. And there are also, new sort of forms of elemental beings, but I have not seen them myself yet. I know that from colleagues.
Interesting. How can we learn more about this island project?
That's partly on our website, which is www.leosgea.hr.
Okay.
So there's a bit on there, and the project itself is called Gea Viva.
Okay.
And we are in due course going to put up together a website which is going to be www.geaviva.net.
Excellent.
It's not up and running yet.
Are you going to invite other participants, other collaborators to help you do that project?
Absolutely. I mean, what we're doing at the moment is workshops to prepare that. They're open to everybody, and the information for the workshops is on the Leosgea website. So okay. We are very happy for anybody to join in who wants to join in. I mean, at the moment we're sort of at a point where we're looking for land. If we can get something, we found that there's actually quite a progressive mayor on the island, so we're hoping maybe to get a land lease for some time. We see how that goes.
Yes, the ownership problem is always there. The legal aspect of any architecture or landscape work is always present.
Absolutely, and I mean what I feel is absolutely vital for this project. I mean, Croatia is a fairly poor country. It's on the brink of joining the European Union, so it has a very long coastline. And I think what is bound to happen is that many people from other European countries are going to buy up land, which I feel is quite a big problem, because it might potentially be a sellout of the country. And for that reason, I feel much more comfortable with a land lease than any sort of ownership transfer. So we can say it's going back to the country, it's going back to the Croatian people.
Excellent. I got it. Hey, it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, it's been nice. Thank you.
I'm interested in helping with the island project. That sounds like a spiritual endeavor.
Yeah, I mean, I would be very, very pleased. I mean, what I can do is I have your email address. What we have so far is we set up an association here. So we have the sort of aims and objectives of the association. And as I said, we meet regularly for these workshops. The next one is now in August, which is probably a bit short notice. But after that, we have another one in the autumn, in mid-October,
Okay.
which is a walking pilgrimage across the island. And
Nice.
the next one is between Christmas and New Year, which is a sort of personal visioning trip.
Okay. Very cool. I will put this up to my sites and my network and advertise it. I'd like to help you.
Thank you so much. That would be great.
Sabine Engelhardt from Zagreb, I appreciate your time. I'll see you on YouTube real soon, okay?
Okay, see you. Thanks, Willi. Bye.
Ciao.